Welcome, viewers, to this special discussion this afternoon, coming live from studio here in Serena. And today, the heart of our discussion is biodiversity. Please, if you're wondering what it is, we are going to explain that in a moment. I'm sure you have heard of it. And there's this question of what does it have to do with me? And the premise for our discussion this afternoon is the International Day for Biological Diversity or Biodiversity, which is slated for tomorrow. We will see what's the relevance of that discussion. But the idea also to bring you in, we want to restore nature together. That one must be familiar with. You may be wondering what's biodiversity, but now we are saying restoring nature together. That means that there is a problem that is happening to nature. And we can't shrug our shoulders and give up, because it has something to do with our lives, the lives of our children, the lives of our grandchildren. So you cannot ignore it. It goes into the things you do, the way you farm, the way you build your house, where you build it, and what you can do. We might be experiencing a lot of heat, too much rain, extreme things. They spring from partly destroying of nature. And as we think about the International Day for Biological Diversity, which is coming tomorrow, we want to say how you can join with everybody of us to restore nature together. And in studio, I have two guests who are qualified to speak about the things I'm going to say today. I'll start with my immediate left. I think it's right on your studio. Mr. Francis Ogwal, who is the Natural Resources Manager, Biodiversity from the National Environment Management Authority, NEMA. Mr. Ogwal, you're welcome.
Thank you.
And on the left of Mr. Ogwal is Mr. David Dooley, Country Director for the Worldwide Fund for Nature. Again, you can see it falls in place. Mr. Dooley, welcome.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, viewers.
I hope you don't mind me calling you by first name so that we have a conversation.
No problem.
Okay, we're going to work very well. First and foremost, people are going to wonder, or people are wondering, okay, biological diversity or biodiversity, what is that thing? I think let's start with Mr. Dooley. What is biodiversity? We shall come back to Mr. Gwal if you want to add something.
Right. That big term biodiversity is a biological word, but it really doesn't need to scare anybody. It's about the variety of life, and the variety of life we're talking about stems from the small lives that we don't see. Those are microorganisms, and then to species that are those ones which we can see, and it goes on to those variety of those lives at that level. Those are species level, and then the variety of life which those constitute, which are called the ecosystems. They group up and make up what is called an ecosystem. So the variety of different species coming together and interacting with the environment in which they live will constitute what we call the ecosystem. And then we also have the interaction at a much lower level that we don't see. That is the genetic material that constitute those species. Those are also biodiversity at that level. So in science, we call it at the genetic level, at species level, and ecosystem levels. So now when we are talking about biodiversity, and then we are talking about nature, in totality, they contribute what makes up the nature, which looks at the air, which looks at the quality of food you eat, and everything that sustains life. So that is the different levels of biodiversity that we talk about. But it relates quite well with the diversity and the variety of living organisms and materials that those organisms survive on and constitute the environment in which we live that forms the ecosystem.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had ecosystem and things like
Genetic diversity.
Genetic diversity.
Yeah.
Are we part of biodiversity, humans?
Absolutely, we are part of biodiversity because we are made of nature and we have our genetic material. We interact with the nature around us, with other species around us, so we constitute a grouping within the ecosystem that we live in. And then we also have our genetic material that identifies you. These days we call about DNA. So we constitute our own genetic material that makes us look like human being and different from other animals.
Absolutely.
So we also have so we constitute and we belong to that group, and that's why it is important when we celebrate this day is to bring us together and say, we are not better than any other living organism created by God.
Okay.
We are
That's
at equal level, so we need to coexist in order to have that stable system.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Gwal, do
Yes.
you have a dimension on the in line with what Mr. Duli has said on biodiversity? Can you take us back to class a little bit?
Yes, biodiversity. It comes from two words, basically. Biological and then diversity. So those two were combined to form the word biodiversity. So biodiversity or biological diversity deals with living things.
Yes.
Biodiversity. So you're talking of basically the different types of living things that are there, both plants and animals. The one that we basically see. Of course, there are others that are invisible. Now we are talking about COVID. Those are invisible.
Yes.
Yes, but there are these that we see, the plants, the animals. Now, those plants and animals were created first by God biblically. And then we came later.
Then number 6.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, by the fact that God first created all this means that those different species of plants and animals, name them, are the ones that sustains life here on earth for us. So if we are joking with the biodiversity, we are joking with our own lives, because immediately they are all gone from this planet. We are gone. You talk about health. Today, they're going to tell you to eat different types of food, you eat fruits, do what? That is biodiversity. Because it is not, people think biodiversity is far from them. The different species of plants and animals is what you need to survive on this planet. So when the doctors are saying, go and eat greens, go and eat this, and we know people who have the different types of greens and what they do. Now, if every species of those is disappearing, we are becoming more and more vulnerable to diseases.
I agree.
So the outbreaks of diseases like COVID, if there's loss of this species, we are bound to actually disappear, because the medicine that we need that could treat that will not be there, and any other intervention is needed. So we all the time we go back to nature whenever we have a problem. We don't go anywhere.
No.
It is nature that answers the problem that we get. So that is why when we are celebrating this day of biodiversity or biological diversity, we have to reflect, we have to attach a value to biodiversity, because without it, no human being will be here. So it's not a joking matter when it comes to biodiversity. We need to be very serious about it. We need to live in harmony. We need to respect nature. We need to make peace with nature. Because if we are reckless to nature, it's like we want to leave this planet.
And let me not go away from you. Let me stay with you, Mr. Gwal.
Yes.
The day, International Day on Biological Diversity, you have
Yeah.
given us, both gentlemen have given us a good, rounded definition of biodiversity. But now, the International Day for this thing, biological diversity, why was it instituted, and why are we marking it tomorrow?
Yes. First of all, to say the day, if today was, say, either Thursday, we could have done it if tomorrow was a Friday. But being a weekend now, that is why I brought it forward. Now, going to your question of why was it constituted? You see, the date there is 22nd May.
Yeah.
So every year that the world has to go back to see what we are doing to nature. The realization was, at the time when the UN Summit on Environment and Sustainable Development was about to happen, already, like I think in the late 80s, people had started seeing that globally there was a problem. Species were disappearing, ecosystems were being degraded. We are getting more vulnerable to adverse impacts, like you now see whenever it rains. Certain areas that the trees were there to hold the soil and so forth, it is no longer possible. You see the landslide. So people saw that actually globally, human beings are under threat from loss of biodiversity, both plants and animals. And therefore, they came out with the idea, we need a convention. We need a treaty where it brings all parties together, so that they take action at the national level. So actually, as we talk today, the Convention on Biological Diversity was adopted at that Rio summit in 1992. But before that happened, the text of that convention was being discussed among parties, among stakeholders. And the text that was agreed on, and they said this text is good enough to go to the UN, was in Nairobi on 22nd May.
Oh.
Yeah, so now this, every time you see that, it makes us recall that that is the day the text of the convention was agreed. So the UN then declared that let that day be the day for biodiversity. So that is how it came about, that we try to memorize the day that that text was, because it's not easy to agree on a text of a convention. You're dealing with CBD now, Convention on Biological Diversity, has 196 parties to it. So it is not easy to agree on a text. So once there's a text agreed upon, remember, even is a celebration of some sort. So that is how it came about.
Okay.
Yeah.
The global theme, let me move to Mr. Duli there. The global theme is we are part of the solution. Ought we not to be?
Good. I think we are also the problem. So we have definitely to be part of the solution. And I think this theme is very appropriate. At this particular time, when we see a decline on biodiversity globally, you know, there are very clear reports that have been you know, research done by different organizations. For example, by WWF a few years ago, saying that 68% of the species of plants, of mammals, reptiles, amphibians have disappeared, got extinct, completely wiped out of the world since 1970. So 1970 is not very far. So those species have disappeared. So we are part of the solution to restore those species.
Because we are part of the problem.
We are part of the problem. And why is it that we are part of the problem? You know, when you look at biodiversity in totality, it brings the products. And those products are the ones we survive on. You know, we survive on food is part of the biodiversity. The fish, the meat we eat, the matoke we eat is that biodiversity. The timber that we cut and use for paneling our walls here and construction is biodiversity. So because we went into and start using those products of biodiversity without considering that we need to replant and have them regenerate naturally, then we end up into overusing and leading to the decline. And therefore, it is we who should be the part of the solution. We know what was there before, and we know the use of those things, the values of those things. So we need to be part of the solution to restore it. And I think this theme really talks to us in our hearts, individually, as families, households, governments, businesses should really take this theme very seriously, because you are part of the solution. You don't point a finger. You can't say, you have cut a tree, but you are also part of the problem.
What are you doing? The timber.
You are consuming the timber.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Very nice. I want to stay with you a little bit on themes. Our national theme is restoring nature together. The other one was we are part of the solution. That's the global. Now we are restoring nature together. Who constitutes this together? And I know obviously we are going to say, oh, you and me, but really.
Yeah, I think this togetherness really comes in totality with the society that we have and the businesses that we have, the different entities that we have existing in the country, and the policies that we have, the legislations that we have, the institutions that we have, the systems of regulating and managing those institutions, very important. I could go one by one and say this ministry is important to us because of this and this.
And there are many ministries.
And there are many ministries. So Ministry of Finance comes in. The financing that requires for restoration is important. So they are part of the togetherness in restoring. The communication, the Ministry of Communication and the National Guidance, very important in creating this information to everyone. It's not only to the elite, but also to the common man in the villages who are actually depending on this nature, on this biodiversity. They need to get this information, and they need to know that they have a responsibility to restore what they have used. And the churches, the culture, you know, we are born within the culture of of biodiversity, you know. My colleague here, his name is Ogwal. Ogwal is a biodiversity, is a frog.
I didn't know.
And so he takes the name of a frog.
Yeah.
And then we have people like Ogwang and other names. You know, those ones tell you that culturally, as we come to this earth,
we are
already related to biodiversity. So we are togetherness. The togetherness is from the time you were born and the time you have grown up and the time you have become aware of yourself and what you have done on earth in terms of consumption, in terms of pollution, what you use and dump there in the environment. You are part of the solution. So it is a broader context, and I think it cannot be achieved in one day celebration like this, but it can make a bump that, you know, okay, I'm now aware, I'm part of the solution. I have got to restore. And how do you restore? You restore by putting back what was there. You don't change what was there.
No.
So you need to understand. At the time when you are growing up, what was there? I have this river flowing, I had this stream flowing in our village. What has happened? They've cut all the trees up there. So that's why the rivers have what? Or the stream has dried.
Yeah.
So we are part. Mobilize your community, go up there, plant, and the stream will start flowing. So you are part of the solution. So a community is part, household is part, institutions are part, businesses are part of the solution, and then, you know, the rest of us.
I saw River Rizi, so people can understand what we are saying in togetherness. River Rizi has been in the news, and that community there was talking about the plastic that is in there, and they were trying to, you know, get the plastic out, and they were trying to bring the media to focus on that. I was actually touched by that. I'm thinking, okay, I wish that can be sustainable, and the plastic. So we'll come back to that issue. Let me come to Mr. Ogwal. Mr. Duli talked about togetherness, and he had a strong inclination towards government. Let's go to private sector. And I'm thinking about, for example, there are many examples, property developers. How could you, if you're addressing them directly, how can they be part of the together? The guys who cut land and do estates, because they are very critical. If you
yeah, I know. Yes, I think first of all, the concept of doing or restoring together is to say that we should not leave anybody behind. You know, even globally now there's a talk of nobody should be left behind. We want everyone at whatever level, at whatever business you're doing. Now, when you look at the housing estates that are coming up, we really need housing. We need accommodation, no doubt about that.
Yeah.
And
basic need.
Yeah, people are migrating from town, from villages to town, and therefore more accommodation is needed. But in today's world, we are talking of having green cities. You see, or even they are now these days they are calling it green infrastructure. You know, the urban center, which is very much full of concrete and buildings, is very hot. Move out there just in Kampala and look at places like Kololo, look at maybe Nakasero, where you see greenery. When you are there, you appreciate the ambience, you appreciate the fresh air which is there.
I was going with the border guy.
Yes.
Through Kololo. He said, hey, Manange, this place is great. But so, go on, sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, so that is just how simple it is. So as these estates are being developed, we need now to be looking at the element of integrating, putting some tree planting aspects in there, having proper landscaping. I have a very small compound, really, at home, but I've planted trees there, planted in 2011. But now, the trees are big. People visit me, say, oh, your place here, you know, it's very fresh, it's welcoming. But in Uganda or in Kampala, what do people do? Get a small place, turn it to concrete, and next they are saying the place is very hot. You know, you are in a building, but when it is dry season, you feel like getting out. Outside is hot. Yes, now from inside it is hot. You want to come out. Out is also hot. So basically, you are sweating. The fan is, you know, running. Then your electricity bill is going up. But you need now to have that element of, you know, blending with nature, making sure that you have more green environment with you, so that nature serves you better. You save on your energy and electricity also, because fresh air comes in. So as those property people are going to carry on with such development, the big ones, of course, we need to do what we call environmental impact assessment, through which we can guide them on some of those. But even at individual level, at your level, where you don't need environmental impact assessment, a small compound, however small it is, plant some trees there. You will appreciate it when you grow up. Birds start coming there. That place when I went, by the time we just shifted, there were no birds there. Birds were not visiting. Now there's a bird at 6 a.m. If I'm still sleeping, I think it is the woodpecker, definitely it will wake me up.
Yeah.
There are birds that have started visiting us. You know, so you interact more with the nature. So I think we can build those housing units, but we need just to blend with nature.
Okay.
We need to plant trees.
Apart from regulation, let me stay with those people.
Yeah.
We are speaking to an audience here who may be some of them living in those estates. Apart from regulation, how would you engage the guys who build estates? We shall come to other people, but I want to just hang on that group for a moment. How would you think we should engage those people who do estates so that they don't just, because what they do,
Yes.
they clear every tree, then they cut plots.
Yeah.
Apart from regulation, because sometimes they can find their way around. How do we engage such people so that whoever buys the plot finds a tree and they are told it was left there for a purpose? How do we get into their hearts? Let me turn to Mr. Duri. We are brainstorming a little bit.
Right, thanks. I think we need to engage and bring this information to estate developers. You need space for your estate, but you don't just need space for the buildings and parking. You also need space for that greenery which we are talking about. And a very good example is, for example, in town here, Bugolobi Estate is one of the oldest estates in this city. But it's one of the estates which is so expensive despite being very old. You know, a flat there goes, if you want to buy it, it's up to about 350 million.
Wow.
Flats which were built in the 70s, the late 70s, early 70s. That's the same amount you would get if you go to other parts of town where somebody has not planned the estate to give that greenery, give that space, give that opportunity for nature to interact with the people who are living there, which you can see in Bugolobi. For example, it is not the best, but it is there. Where you have only concrete, you will find a flat going at 150, a two-bedroom flat, 50 million. So why have you lost all that money? Look at it from that perspective, that this person has a combination of nature with his estate, and therefore his estate has a higher value than what I do.
Yeah.
There are people who have innovated and even have water flowings, a stream flowing through the estate.
Very creative.
Very creative. And it becomes quite natural. It brings some natural, plants which are in the wetlands and plant them there. And you would be surprised, the children and the estate dwellers would go and sit around just to enjoy that.
The magnet with nature.
Magnet with nature. So it's bringing their business in line with nature and making sure that and appreciating that nature can actually enhance the value of their estates. That's what we need to be doing.
I totally agree. Because there are some estates where you go and they say the roof must be roofed in this color. There's a rule on the roofing.
Yeah.
Why can there be a rule on greenery, for instance? Why can there be? I'm just thinking. And
Yes.
Yes.
If I may say something about that, I think we have laws in this country, and I'm sure even with the physical planning and other things, definitely those provisions could be there. But I think the major challenge is just enforcement. If you look at historically, you go to the days of the colonial times, those who were there then, maybe in the early 60s, late 50s and so forth. If you look at what this environment looked like, it is not this. Today people are just too much of, people want to do things their way. Those days I'm told that they would first make sure that when you're building a home, there's a pit latrine, there is your house and so forth. But these days you go in some homes and there are no pit latrines. So where are they going when it's time for that activity?
That's a good question.
Now, the same way with the greenery, really. I think sometimes people need to see, even if it is for their own good, having a pit latrine was not for the person who is telling you to have it. The benefit was yours because you are properly disposing of waste. But why should you actually be forced to have it? And if the person has not come, then you don't do it. So I think with the greenery, if we can go a little bit further, and the city authorities now, we have now cities, cities have come on, that should be the concept. that if you don't have that provision, say that in your plan or anything, they don't approve it. They don't get approval.
Yeah.
So then people need to be, I think, you call it forced, or at least they need to be nudged into doing something. It seems when it is left just like that, everybody says, after all, the other person has not done it, but yet at the end of it, everybody will benefit from that, including that person.
And gentlemen, you can see that we were trying to discuss the nature, restoring nature together. First, in areas that people feel they are close to them. If you go to Mbale, Soroti, some of these old districts, the coolest places are those old, they call them senior quarters.
Yes.
Senior quarters.
Yes,
but
even Lira.
They are called Chizungu.
Yes.
Because, I think because of the trees, in my view.
Yeah.
You're right.
Actually, what then happened, I don't know how I've not read the history proper there, but that concept is almost in all those towns. Lira, you find there's junior quarters, senior quarters.
And these are cities now.
Now, with the junior quarters is where there are just these boys quarter-like structures those days, small units, no spaces for greens. But you go to senior quarters, you see buildings and then trees. The place is cool. So that is a concept already with us, that we don't need to reinvent the wheel. You see already the benefit of part of a city which is having trees in it. So we just need to go along those lines, because the benefits are clear.
And before we leave that, please go ahead, Mr. Dori.
Yeah, I want to just add in something about what we call sustainable homes.
Yes.
You know, that concept, it's being practiced in many countries now, where actually you have a home, but it's self-sustaining. You harvest your own water. This is a country with an average, rainfall every year of over 1,000 millimeters. That's a lot of rainfall. So you can harvest your water and have your water that you recycle in your own home, clean water, and which would sustain you. Coming to power, you don't need to have this grid electricity or having a lot of generators in your home. You can have solar that generates and powers your battery and which can run a lot of things in your home. So getting that concept together with the greenery, and you put an estate like that, you would charge any amount of money and somebody would just go there and say, I forget about this check, these bills every month, but it's already within the rent that I pay because I have solar, I have my recycled water, and this business of there's no water in this part of town, you don't suffer from that. And those going back to your first question, how do we really incentivize and inform the estate developers that there is opportunity beyond what they think now of building concretes everywhere? But if you bring it with the green, bring in carbon neutrality within your estate for heating and for all this kind of thing, you fetch a better return on your estate investment.
Interestingly, with the initiative, human beings can be very strange. You can't think that, who's going to consume that? But you start doing what you're saying, and you see the magnet. There's that estate we have been seeing there in Entebbe. First, by the fact that it's by the lakeside, is enough magnet.
Yes.
And they are busy planting trees within. And it's being talked about as high end.
Yes.
So high end is actually with green.
You pay more.
Yeah, that picture there.
Yes, you pay more.
You can see what it does. They are modern planners.
Yes.
But they are putting green with it. And you
see
the
that
feeling and then the value. Here we are talking to developers. Sometimes you need to show them that environment is not just about anything, it's about money actually.
Right.
To enter their hearts. Let's move on. On the general concept, development needs are always on the collision course with biodiversity and environment everywhere, even in Uganda. Let's get the assessment of the problem. We have generalized it. How serious is the collision course between development and biodiversity and nature restoration in Uganda? Gentlemen, what do you assess? Let me start with Mr. Guan.
Yes, development, I think in this case when we're talking, but maybe we are now meaning a bit of a large-scale development. We've moved out from subsistence farming. We're coming to some of these large-scale development activities. Like you're talking about maybe the housing estates. There's something that covers a relatively bigger space. You're talking of maybe things like the hydropowers and other development. Those that need more space, those might impact negatively on the environment. So you see, in life, there is nothing like zero impact.
Absolutely.
even when you are going to get treated by a doctor, you have malaria, the first thing is most likely they will cause you pain. They will say, let's do blood test. They pinch you, and then not only pinching, sorry, they will take a sample from you with that needle. There are some people, when they see a needle, you know, can't imagine how they behave. Phobia, even if it is a small needle. So that is it, that there is nothing like zero impact. But the impacts now have to be addressed through what we call doing environmental assessments. Now, when you do the environmental assessment, there are some impacts that actually you don't need measures to meet. Like this needle that I told you could be used to prick. After a while, the pain has gone. But they've got the what? The blood, and they're now going to get the needed results from you. So with this development, when the assessment is done, there are some impacts that you may not really need a lot of action to take on them. But there are others where we say, okay, now here you will need to do mitigation measures. For example, if you were going to pass a road through, say, an area of a forest, because you've looked at the routing, and you find whether you go this side or the other side, or in the middle here, still you are going to bring down some trees. You see Mabira when you pass there? You see Budongo, there are roads in there. The
road to Chibari.
Yes. So what do you think happened in that process? Definitely some trees were cut. So that is what you call unavoidable. They are unavoidable impacts. But we have not cleared the entire forest to have the road.
Actually, it's nice to drive through those sections.
You experience the cool air which is there. So now the new concept which is there is what we are calling offsetting those. That for those species that you've lost there, the trees that you could have lost from that spot, before that activity is done, we do the inventory to know the species which is where that road is going to pass, and therefore to reduce on our footprint, we shall plant them elsewhere. Say if it is part of Budongo Forest Reserve, there might be a part of Budongo that is degraded or some area where there is cultivation going on. So we will raise those tree seedlings and plant them the other side. So this is where you are beginning now to do with the mitigating the impacts, you know. So there are certain areas where you can really try. That's why I'm saying there's nothing like zero impact. We have to bring down some few trees to pass the road. Even in, you see roads passing through a wetland and so forth. Still, we need the roads as human beings. People will say, even here we don't have roads taking us the other side, or the road which is, so they will need those infrastructure. Yeah, they will need the infrastructure. But that infrastructure will definitely cause a bit of loss here and there. So that win-win situation is what we are grappling with. And that is the role that NEMA plays most of the time, to guide those developers to try to achieve that win-win situation. You know, so it is not so easy, but the tool environment impact assessment can help us to reduce some of those.
From the WWF standpoint, Mr. Gwari is the regulator and is in government. From your standpoint, what's your assessment of that issue? What have you encountered as WWF? I know you have done programs like in Western Uganda and other places. What are the issues you have encountered along the line of development versus biodiversity, sustainability, and issues like that?
Yeah, thank you. I think there are many issues. Certainly, as my colleague has said, development comes with a cost.
Yes.
And that cost is borne by the environment to a large extent. I think one of the key issues that we are facing right now is on the energy, for example.
Yes.
We have oil and gas exploration that has been concluded, and now we are in the development phase.
Yeah.
A lot of that is happening in the Alberton Rift, and most of them, the oil wells are within protected areas.
Yeah, the national parks.
So in national parks and Ramsar sites, and even some forest reserve within those areas. So, well, the regulators came out with the impact assessment issues, and the companies have gone out to do those activities.
Yeah.
And it's being monitored, and to ensure that they don't surpass the limits which were set to sustain the environment and sustain those natural ecosystems. But we also see now further development coming on. The oil has got to be evacuated.
Yeah.
We have the infrastructure that has got to be developed, the oil pipe through Tanzania to Tanga, Uganda to Tanga, up to about 1,400 kilometers, which is a heated oil pipe, which needs some additional energy to heat it so that it can flow, and that is going to increase on what? The carbon emission as well. So we need to balance how much are we getting from this oil and how much are we offsetting, what my colleague was telling, of our carbon footprint in producing this oil. So these facts have got to come out and then monitored. And then that's one. And then we also have issues, for example, hydropower, you know, establishment where you have dams, and dams are going to flood certain parts of some parts of the areas, and those are the social and environmental impact issues as well. So how do you mitigate that? The impact assessment would have been done, but are the companies going to comply? Are they going to be compliant? That means staff monitoring and enforcement has got to follow that. And for us as civil society, we raise those things, bring it on the table, and say, here are the issues. What are we doing about it? How collectively can we address this? Then we get everybody on the table, the oil companies, the regulators, the Uganda Wildlife Authority, and other agencies of government, and say, here we have a problem. So constructive dialogue and discussion on those are the key things that we focus on. Agriculture is the backbone of this country. And from the studies that we have done, 43% of our biodiversity loss is contributed by agriculture, subsistence and commercial. So how do we address that is the issue that we are now coming at. We are working with NEMA on that, and that we need to come out of, to revolutionize the way we do our agricultural systems.
And we will be coming back to details, but continue.
Which comes with that one. And then the settlement, which my colleagues have also mentioned, is a big thing.
Settlements?
Yes.
What do you mean there?
Houses and homes and estates, they are now constituted up to about 13% of biodiversity drivers.
Oh.
So when you look at that, and we mentioned about estates, when you see most of the estates, they are coming in the wetlands. They pound these wetlands at night with the with maram, and the following day you find a building or an estate coming up. You just go on the Sukuma Road here, you see many of them, and you talk about the area you come from, that side
Chira.
That side of Chira. You know, those are the kind of things we're seeing. So how do we really get back to the basics and say, well, this development has taken place, how then do we mitigate and make sure that this nature is recovered, which has been lost?
Absolutely. And here we are discussing maybe national infrastructure, like oil. Mr. Gwal, let us peer into, because people listen to NEMA and they say, NEMA has done an environmental impact assessment. Those guys are just, you have heard that.
Yes.
Let us peer in. The pipeline is a must. And as you said, there is no zero impact, there will be impact.
Yes.
As you do those assessments, help us see how you do it. How do you draw the line and say, here we will be going overboard regardless, and this is where we stop? How, in your matrices, how do you do it? I just want to take a disadvantage to help people see how sometimes you are faced with those challenges. How do you do it?
Yeah, I would like to give these examples, and perhaps we can relate it to the pipeline as well. I will take the concept there. Now, when the Northern Bypass was being conceived, I remember I was working in wetlands program then, and we were consulted as Wetland Inspection Division, because either way, there were wetlands that the road was going to pass through. So we looked at two routes. We looked at, you know, coming from that side of Chireka and using the southern part. And then we looked at the northern part of Kampala. Now, having done that assessment, we found that both of them you are going to pass through wetlands. But you'll pass through fewer wetlands on the northern side than if you went on the southern side. And therefore, the road by design went to the northern. That's called the northern bypass. So in the same way, when you're looking at some of this routing, it will be a pipeline and any other. One thing that the people who are doing the assessment will have to do, they'll have to look at scenarios. If you passed on this route, you may find you are going to hit, say, a very thick forest. And that is, then they'll say, but instead of passing through that forest, there's alternative. You can either pass outside of it or completely leave that forest and go through another. So those are kind of factors taken on board. You are looking at the one with perhaps the least impact, you know, vis-a-vis the one with the highest. So so when we are reviewing the impact assessment, we look out for such. If you take this route, you are bound to pass through more and more of those natural ecosystems that are yet not converted, and therefore you need to avoid it. And then this one will try to tell you, and naturally you've seen even some roads as they keep winding, you know, they tried even those days.
Sometimes we are wondering why they are winding. Why didn't they go straight?
Yes, they are just trying to, I think, put an infrastructure over water, like he has told you, wetlands. If you know Mpologoma.
I know Mpologoma.
Just imagine if you were to go through that. They had to look through perhaps a shorter point.
Shortest point.
Yes.
Okay.
Than just being careless and looking at a very long point, for which you need a lot of resources and other things, and that will cause more damage. So those are the factors really that are taken on board. You look at the list with the available impacts you have. The one that qualifies should be the one with the least impact. And then now you see how to now do the other offsetting I was talking about.
In restoring our nature, I'm still with you, Mr. Ward. Do do the environmentalists always get there? You are looking at protecting shortest path, but then there are other factors. Now there is the people's gardens here. Do you always get your way? And if you don't, how do you find the middle ground? I want people to peer into the difficulty of your work.
Yes,
if you like.
Yeah, of course. Environmental management is not only about, say, the natural resource, you know, or forests or wetlands and what have you. You will definitely, as you've said, come across where you meet human aspects. That is why these days we call it environmental and social impact assessment.
Yes.
So in there, we shall also see if there are people's gardens, what is the compensation bid that is needed. So before that project is executed, there will be requirement for the developer actually to compensate. We put that very clearly usually in the approval condition, that they will have to compensate individuals who are negatively affected by the project, so that people can shift elsewhere. So that is how the development brings in both protecting nature but also the human being, because you cannot remove the human being from the environment. We are just part of it. People think biodiversity is somewhere, they are somewhere. You are just part of it.
We are biological.
You are biological in nature. You eventually, to say this, we give back. The day God calls us, we give back to nature.
We go back to the ground.
We go back there. So it is a cycle.
That's calcium and another mineral.
We are part of it. When you ever say we are part of nature, we don't want to accept it, but that is the reality. It is only because these days people are put in concrete, is it? Especially, I think Christians, you put in that concrete.
Concrete is still mineral, you know what I mean?
So, but the other faith, I think you are just put there. And then it is your soul that is the main focus. But otherwise, this physical body just goes back and becomes part of nature. And the plants again start using it. You understand? The grass and other things. So it is.
Let me come to Mr. Doli. Mr. Ogwal here is NEMA, and many times deals with they deal with high-level projects. Let's go to the communities you go to as civil society. The local governments, and then the LCs. How do we bring those guys on board? Because when the soil is being thrown into the wetland, most likely they know. And Mr. Gwalia may, by the time he comes around, tons of soil have gone in there. I remember there was a time when some guys were dropping soil in the wetland, and I called NEMA because of my job. I had a number. I said, come, and so they came, and the thing was stopped. 12 month 18, they began again. So how do we bring on board the most critical people now at the lower end? Because NEMA can't be everywhere. How do we enter their hearts and tell them people?
Yeah, very important question. You know, the community and those local level, you know, administrative systems that we have are very instrumental in changing what happens around them, also in fueling a problem around what happens.
Absolutely.
Because they live there, they know everything that goes on within their environment. They know every visitor who comes in. They know every vehicle that gets into their villages every day. If a foreign vehicle comes, they know whose vehicle was that, what was it coming to do. So they are part and parcel of that environment and part and parcel of that protecting of that biodiversity.
Yes.
So that's where we come from. We come from a point that however much effort you put to protect what is there, as long as you don't engage with the local community, and then you just don't engage them to get information and use them, but give them the power to be able to say yes and no.
Yes.
And that's why, in the example you said, that when the communities are sensitized, they were able to chase away some people who had come maybe to mine sand or do certain things in their villages. Is because these things do happen if you leave them out of it. And then they would also become spectators. But they are watching and they know that this is wrong and this is going to impact us.
And they say it's
And
government's job.
they feel that is government jobs, but it's going to impact us. What are we going to do? You know, we have no voice, we have no sense of citizenship.
That
citizenry.
thing of we have no say.
Yeah.
Can I add
So,
something?
Yes. Okay. We'll come back to his burning organization.
Yeah. So let me just
Yes.
first finish. So
Okay.
our dealings is normally with civil society because they have to be organized, and then I talked about empowering.
Yeah.
Empowering means you have to organize them and take them in the right direction. Bring their knowledge together. They have a lot of valuable information and knowledge, but use that knowledge to make it better for them, to have the power and the ability to control what is happening around
Because
them.
they see.
They see, they know it affects them, and they can have a voice. And this is already, being it wildlife, you know,
Yes.
when you go around protected area and they say there's a lot of poaching,
Yeah.
and you go with your rangers, the rangers can start looking around in the homes. But if you talk to these people, where are these poachers? They will say, we
They
know
will
them.
know. Yeah, yeah.
And we can point them, say, where are they keeping the meat? Come and we take you.
Remember the lion killers? They
Yes.
were caught within no time.
So
Yeah.
community engagement and empowerment is very, very central to biodiversity conservation. But one thing, they need to see the value. What are they getting out of it? Being it indirect values, that is going to make their soils more productive and their agriculture better, they need to see that. Being it economic returns that they're going to get out of that.
Yeah.
Because
The
they
translation.
they need to appreciate that. So you need to give, you need to give back to them, and there must be a mechanism of giving back to them so that they really know it's because of this environment that we're keeping, or these assets that we're keeping, that is making us better now. So that's how we come out from a conceptual point of view. Then when it comes to real engagement, there is a lot of processes that we go through. You know, like now most 50, up to about 40 and above %
Yeah.
of our investment go into supporting civil society. Because we know through the civil society, the communities can be better organized.
So it seems now there's a component of the local leaders.
Absolutely. So you find the local leaders, for example, they are part of this civil society. At the same time, they're holding offices in government, in LC and LC2, and then at the district level. So they bring their development aspects at the lowest level right to the district notice at the higher level of what? Council. So in a way, they are really empowered already in terms of talking about what is around them. For example, if you want to pass a road through a village, you will have to talk to them.
Absolutely.
And you have to come to terms. And it could be the different thing that a road is just surveyed, and the following day the villagers are seeing the road passing through their and passing through their gardens. They say, what is your problem? Fill these forms, and this is the compensation, which may not be even equivalent to what they are losing in terms of the road passing. So that's why the community engagement is very important in our work.
Okay. Mr. Gwari, you had a point to join to that.
Actually, I wanted to help him with when it comes to the communities.
Yes.
I would tend to look at communities maybe in you're talking of the communities either of the affluent class. If you're talking of the cities,
I had also in mind the...
Then the other.
Yeah, the other.
Now he has been touching on the men call it the village people. Those ones really, when you look at them within nature, anything that goes wrong with the nature, they're the first
To suffer.
to suffer.
Yeah.
But we need either you call it a change of mindset, change of attitude, a change among the affluent class.
Yeah, okay.
If you look at construction in urban centers, which villager is doing that?
No villager, maybe they are
So
doing
the problem of environmental degradation, wetlands in cities, they are either the affluent class or even sometimes these same cities themselves,
The city
because
authorities.
yes, approving plans
Yeah.
in wetlands, and then now they say NEMA is doing nothing. Honestly, how can government institutions begin doing things in different direction? In the first place, those plans should not be approved. So you find now the person who has had his plans approved has started building. Then we are saying don't. And the person is saying, I've already spent so much money. Then it turns political. You understand? So there is something that there should be a shift in paradigm here about the way people are looking at urban centers and feeling of a wetland. We should look at it. Anybody we see feeling a wetland, we should think that person is perhaps very archaic, somebody who is a bit backwards. Because how do you, that is a place that should be performing other functions. You go and put there your structure. Then when it rains, perhaps
It comes back to
it
bite
comes
you.
back and then somebody's building is flooded up. Then they are saying government is not assisting us.
A
Look at
disaster.
this kind of circus. You went to the nature's way and caused and did what you've done. Then when there's a problem, you say, we are not being helped. So these urban centers, people who want to construct, I think the wetlands is not the place you should go to.
Yeah.
Just simple. But for some reasons, I think everybody wants to be associated with having built in Kampala. Wherever, I don't know, who doesn't even care whether you are in a place where sewage passes, and in the evening you are busy sniffing, you know, all that. You are going to be sick. So anyway, maybe
Yeah.
Mr. Do you want to add something
I wanted to
before
add
we go for the
something.
break?
Yeah, I wanted to add something which is connected to the discussion we had about the communities
Yes.
at the local level. You know, I think if we look at it from the perspective of rights,
Yes.
you know, if citizens understand their rights, and you know, my right is to the clean environment. My right is to have this wetland around us because it provides me these services. So if somebody comes to tamper with that, you reflect on your right and you raise up. The same in town. I mean, there, you know, you find these wetlands. You know, around it, there are people who have built nice houses which
Yeah.
are not in the wetland, but they are seeing this person dumping the wetland, and they keep quiet.
Like
So
no
do they
one
know?
cares.
Do they know their rights? So I think we go back to the basics and said, let's all the citizens know their rights and exercise that right. Just don't know and keep it.
let me add something there.
Yeah, on the right.
Now,
1 minute before we go for the break.
right comes with responsibility as well.
Absolutely.
Because if I have a right to a decent house or to construct a house, I don't have to go and do it in a wetland.
wetland.
No, but I have a right to build a house.
Absolutely.
So most of the time, people think rights also comes with the responsibility on the other side. You know, it's like somebody saying, I want to pray. And you make noise for people the whole night.
You have a point which I wanted to conclude with.
Then why do you, and the same people, if they're in town and they hear somebody hooting, they say that fellow is making noise. Now people have gone back to go and sleep, and you are making noise the whole night. You're going to affect productivity. You have the right to pray,
but
whatever, but make sure the noise to the level where it doesn't inconvenience other people.
as we go for the break, on the point Mr. Gold ended with, I like calling the police. Sometimes I don't know, not NEMA, but police. When people are praying and making noise, all these guys are playing their disco, whatever. And the rest of the neighbors are keeping quiet. But when you talk to them, they say, hey, the noise is too much. People are not aware of their rights. So I asked them, do you know that we can challenge that guy? In fact, one time there's a guy who went to court. And he had to,
Rights should come even on biodiversity. If they see you mishandling a certain either endangered species of plants or animals or what, so even telling people not to build in these wetlands, as I was saying, those are the rights that you as an individual
So they
you have a
exercise.
responsibility about.
When we come back, we are going to continue with rights and then move on to other issues on the International Biodiversity Day. Please stay there. Don't go away. I hope you'll find this conversation useful. Welcome back, viewers, and everybody else joining us online also for this very pertinent discussion. premise on International Day for Biological Diversity. And here we are trying to say, when you hear biodiversity, International Day, don't say, those are their things. It has to do with you, with your children and your grandchildren. And we are discussing along the theme, Restoring Nature Together, which is the national theme. However, the global theme is we are part of the solution, because partly we are the cause of the problems. You are finding the rains are in extreme. When the sunshine comes, it's in extreme. The landslides, the heat, and so on. That is because we are not being responsible. And I'm saying we, including me. But there's a time to make a change, and it is now. And in the studio, we have to my immediate left, Mr. Francis Ogwal from the National Environment Management Authority. He's a Natural Resource Manager. And to his left there is Mr. David Dooley, who is the country manager for the Worldwide Fund for Nature. And we are tapping into the experience and knowledge to help us see what we can do together to restore nature together. Because sooner or later to catch up with us. You saw lake levels were rising and people were in peril. Up to now, people have lost houses they have owned for a long time. That means maybe one day the lake was in that place. And there are so many other things we are doing with our environment. We have estates, we have our neighborhoods which are very, very hot. And people say, when we came here, the temperature was low, but now it's so hot. At night it's so hot when it's supposed to be cool. It has something to do with your activity. But we can change that together. So gentlemen, welcome back. When we went for the break, we were talking about rights. And we were saying as we were at the break, I see my neighbor pouring soil in the wetland, and I know it's wrong. However, I keep quiet. I see somebody destroying something, and I know. And I'll give an example if I ask the question. There were crocodiles which were eating people. People could have taken that decision in their hands and killed it. Yeah. But they called UA. They called UA through the district and the Gombolora. That means that they have understood that there is a point in preserving this one, and let's call someone
who can handle it.
Who came. So how do we translate that one experience into people knowing that if my neighbor is pouring water into a wetland or is just cutting trees all around, I need to raise government. So I don't put this I don't care attitude. How do we get into that? Let me start with you, Mr. Dooley. Solutions.
Yeah. I think first of all, it is good for the awareness of everybody that some ecosystems like the wetland you are saying are protected. And when they say it's protected, it means you don't go in and do anything you want to do, because they are set aside for a particular purpose. And that purpose is really about maintaining nature and keeping biodiversity and so on. So if somebody comes to destroy it, first and foremost knows that he is going to deprive you of the values and the services that particular ecosystem provides to you. So you have to be responsible and report that something is going on in this protected area, in this wetland, in this forest reserve, in this national forest, in this all this. There are categories of those, and the good example you mentioned about the crocodile. Everybody knows that is a protected species.
It has sunk.
It has sunk. So if somebody goes hunting in the villages, they will say, no, we have lived with these crocodiles. They belong to government, and which case Uganda Wildlife Authority takes care of them. If you want to hunt them, can you tell us what papers do you have? So that is being responsible citizenry, if you want to say. Responsible citizens that can take their roles and responsibility rightly. And that means they need to be empowered.
Empowerment.
Empowerment needs to be there. We have situation where, in the times when people were still smoking, before they started putting very strict rules on smoking, somebody can light a cigarette in a taxi and start
Absolutely.
And women would vomit in a taxi. And it would look like it's normal. You are just, after all, you are on a ride. And you're going to pay for that ride. But now you don't do that. You do that, everybody in a taxi will just say, stop,
Please
and we
step
get out.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen anymore. So that is the level that we should go with the environment. Taking the environment information, regulations, knowledge about it, which already are there. Because we have grown in the environment, we have lived in the environment, we know what is right and what is wrong. So it's a matter of just awakening that courage
Yeah.
to be able to say no, and it is no, and please don't do it. And we have situations where even, local people or people around a village can arrest somebody who has come to do things that is going to harm their environment.
Yes.
We have those examples. So we need to amplify and make sure we extend that to everyone, and then take the courage. There is also a talk that they are untouchable guys. I don't know where they come from. There's nobody above the law in this country. Even the president is bound by the laws of the country. So who are you who's untouchable? So we just need to know that there's nobody who is untouchable.
Yeah.
So somebody comes in a military truck or a police truck and start chopping down your forest, say, no, this truck is not leaving this place. So just give a call to his bosses at the district. Say, Disu, we have this number of vehicle which is chopping down our trees. It is a military vehicle. What do we do about it? And they will be handled. Honestly, they will be handled. So I think that level of empowerment and knowing your rights is a beginning point, but then understanding how to exercise that right.
And I take it from you see the issue of smoking. Why did it register? Because it was really given overwhelming push from all corners. It was pushed. And now people know. And I think we can achieve the same, in my view, if we put the same effort, because the president has spoken about the issue of the environment and said, people stop. And by him saying that, that means now government up to the top has at least consciously realized that there is something to do outside the NEMA.
Yeah.
And that means that alone can be given a spot, as Mr. Ogwal was saying, finance also has a role, and other ministries. Still looking for solutions on empowerment and rights as a grassroots issue on this issue. Mr. Ogwal, what do you think? How can we use the new parish model? It's a development model, and who said biodiversity is not part of development?
Actually, the other way around, you would say, can development happen without biodiversity? The answer is no. Because whatever we are doing, whether you're talking about improving livestock is what? It's biodiversity. Then you are talking of having water sources around, you need grass, you need everything around that the animal needs. You're talking of improving crop production, doing what? All that is still benefiting from biodiversity. So for me, I think at the individual level, what people need to do are the following. One, for them to know that whatever happens to the environment negatively, ultimately they pay the consequence.
The full circle comes back.
Yes. So in that case, whoever has come, say, to cut down the trees within that area and turn the place bare, like people who are these days in the north, which is now supplying charcoal to the different parts of the country. The north had some element of tree cover, but I'm telling you, if the trend continues as is, there will be shock up there.
And Chairman Mapinduzi was unpopular for us.
You see what he did? Yeah, but sometimes somebody goes at a level because even people are not seeing the danger that they are already putting themselves to. So at that individual level, I think, as he was saying, let everybody who is within there not allow anyone who comes and is being destructive in nature to continue. And they demand, okay, first give us the letters, either from the relevant authorities like NEMA or NFA or whoever.
And if you drum it, they will do it.
Yes, so that if the communities can see that NFA has given letter or district forest services or any other, then they know perhaps there must be reached by the regulation. Then we'll go to NFA. But for somebody to come with a power saw and start raising, I know a power saw can raise the entire landscape in a matter of few days, even 10 minutes. You don't know how many trees are. The chia butter tree, the tamarind, the others in those regional ecosystems that takes hundreds of years to reach where they are. They have all gone down to charcoal. But those trees have got other nutritional health benefits that the people in the north have been benefiting from. Things like heart diseases. They have been eating those things not knowing they will have less heart disease, they have less blood pressure or no blood pressure. Some of these things that is common. In the north, when I was growing up there, they were not much harder. But now, with the landscape losing all those, people are getting more vulnerable. So let people not allow destructive use of nature within the environment. And the LC1, I can tell you, is a culprit to all this. Because whatever bad practice is happening in the environment, it is from a certain village. It is not in the air. It is within a certain... So why would people wait for NEMA to drive all the way from Kampala to Otuke, to Olilim, to, I don't know, a beam, to solve a problem where the LC1 has even failed to report? Sometimes it is actually other concerned citizens. Why is the LC1 quiet?
Not doing anything.
Why? Then you come down to the sub-county level. Why are they also sometimes looking like they just stand the other side, the eye on the other side, and things go bad? So responsibility, as we said, NEMA has got that overall load, but environmental management is still down to the districts. So even the parish model, we have the district environment officers there, and I think some others have even put sub-county environment officers. Let those people integrate environmental concerns at that level, because development that is just going to be haphazard, or activities that are haphazard, the consequence will everybody pays. By the way, somebody destroying the environment today, you see this guy with a power saw and is cutting all the trees in the landscape, and you are saying, but what to do? Now the man has come, cut the trees and burnt charcoal and gone. And you now are the one to face the
landslides.
The landslides, hot weather, what have you failed, crop failures. You are the one. So the more people get to know that there is a bigger consequence, there's a bigger cost to pay from recklessness, the better they can actually go forward with this.
Let me go to Mr. Duli. How critical is it for environment? You know, government sometimes has embarked on a communication mechanism. You know this Operation Wealth Creation? Wealth creation. We in town, we have not seen it. But got some villages, the people have got it. It has sunk because they have sung it and drummed it. How critical do you think should environment be integrated into central government communication drummed to help NEMA? How critical do you think it is?
I think it's highly critical, very, very highly critical. I think we reach a point, and this is what we have been talking since the beginning of the show, that you cannot do any of those things without contexting environment into it. Call it Operation Wealth Creation.
Yes.
You are really looking at the products of the environment which you are going to manage and develop, and then it brings wealth to the people. So you are basically using the products of biodiversity to create wealth. So how on earth would you do that without mining about how do I sustain it? If you're talking about, sustainable, management of goats, you're giving goats. What are these goats going to feed on? Do you have enough land for it? Do you have enough forage for it? And how are you going to manage it and make sure that they don't overgraze that land? Do you have a market so that, when they reach a certain population, you can sell them and it brings that income into your pocket? Very important. So I think we need to have government mainstream environment in nearly all the programs. In all the programs, let me just say. Mainstream environment into that. Then secondly, I think about drumming and sending the message. People listen to our leaders.
Absolutely,
leaders better than anybody else.
I agree.
And these leaders are different categories. They're political leaders, they're cultural leaders, they're opinion leaders. These are the people listen to them. The same message we are talking about here, if somebody of those category of leadership talks, people understand it better than me and Ogwal saying, because they relate to that leader. The politicians convince the voters to give them votes. So these are the entry points in drumming the message. And I'm actually challenging this. We are getting a new parliament and new political position. Let's, challenge them that the same message you use to get the votes, incorporate environment in that message in how you are going to develop or support your constituency. If we do that, and it's cutting across board, nobody will ever cut even any shea butter tree. Nobody will ever cut any muvuli. Nobody would ever do anything without having the right papers, because they know everybody is watching me.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I think one of the solutions is really engaging with the leaders and let the leaders talk the message we are talking here now. They know better how to simplify it. You know, we have been, I gave an example. We are working with Church of Uganda
Yeah.
on biodiversity, on asking the church to help us on nature restoration and biodiversity conservation. Now, the apostolic letter that the Archbishop of Uganda wrote to all the churches that for every sermon, every weekend, every Sunday, please talk about environment. It has gone as wildfire.
Sure.
And we've been talking about the same thing for ages, and they have never reached the churches. But now it's reaching the people. We are talking with we have a memorandum of understanding with the Buganda government, and the Katikkiro said it. And everybody is now within the kingdom. Oh, we need to restore. We need to have our glory of the botanic gardens come back to Buganda. We need to restore our Mayanja River and other rivers. It's now in their talk. More than ever we are done as WWF and other government agency. They understand it better. So that's the power of leadership, the power of leaders to send this message. And I think if we capitalize on that, we'll go a mile beyond what we would have done on our own as technocrats.
So looking at solutions, and I was looking at the issue of the question, can we reverse the loss of more than 50% of our forest cover? And it doesn't have to be in the forest reserves. That could be NFA's mandate to restore the forests with these controversies. But maybe restoring the forests, like we were talking about estates. Leadership and communication, two issues. In terms of using money and funds, because when you drum the information, you need to provide the materials. How do you think, Mr. Gwal, can drumming the information leadership is on board, but somebody says, okay, I need a tree to plant? How can we use funds in that direction if we're looking for solutions, for instance?
Well, I think when it comes to getting everybody or action taken here, for me, mainstreaming, David has talked about it. You see, you can mainstream, but even when you have mainstreamed, let financial resources be. You should actually put financial resources to implement those activities that you have mainstreamed in your various sectors. It could be any of these sectors of government.
The MPs refuse to give us give money for planting trees from the World Bank, and they said that.
Because you see, like people will say we have mainstream environment in our sector. Now when you ask them how much budget of in your ministry goes to that mainstreamed activity, they will say, but that is the role of NEMA. Now why did you mainstream? Just for public relations, you know? But that is not, that is mainstreaming just the startup. There is still more that is needed. So resources have to be put to implement those activities that they commit themselves in their sectors that they are going to do. If they then say, this is NEMA's responsibility, then let them put a budget there and then say, please transfer this budget to NEMA. But I tell you, they cannot do it that way. So, but people should put resources to this. Now, also the other part of the problem of people in restoration, they still want sometimes to be given free seedlings.
Yes.
That concept is not even sustainable. If I've given you free seedlings, 100 of them, what is the motivation? What is the incentive to look after them? You may not even plant. You may plant them careless and not look after them. People, maybe the local communities, but this affluent class, the seedling is costing 500 shillings. You can't buy. And what is the
we're not talking about, because if we are borrowing the model of wealth creation,
yes,
I see what government does in Gombolola, sub-counties.
Yeah.
They give seeds, real seeds like coffee. They can give somebody, like 400 seedlings.
Yeah.
They come and see your land and then give. Of course, there's the economics there, but they give, and those people, the communities, do actually plant. And their lives actually turn out of poverty because household income improves.
Yeah.
So, That's why if we want to borrow the model,
Yeah.
how can we do it best? I know you want the affluent. Let's first leave those ones.
No, what I'm saying,
But also them, yes.
because you see, what people will realize with the time, right now, the best investment perhaps is in tree growing.
Yeah.
The monies grow with those trees. The trees gain value like land. Your planted seedling today, it is 3 years, it is 7 years, it's 10 years,
No
it's 20 years.
depreciation.
No. These annual crops could be easily affected by some other. I'm not saying people shouldn't go for annual crop production, but they still need to. So tree growing, I'm looking at, for the local communities, we will continue, of course, with the support from government now.
Yeah.
If government is to come in and invest more into this sector, so that the seedlings that are needed by local communities can be planted.
That's a good thing.
Yes.
I'm agreeing totally.
So, but if you don't invest in that sector, and you say people should plant trees, honestly.
So you are saying investment. Put the money where your mouth is.
Exactly. So right now, in the years to come, but I think I forgot to say maybe somewhere along the convention that 2021 to 2030
Yeah.
is the UN decade on ecosystem restoration.
Okay.
Globally, people are supposed to get back to nature and make peace with nature. Triple, you've seen the video that was running
Yes.
here, is men on trip. So for the local communities, the farmers, we need to motivate them. It's not a lot of money, but this sector that is so critical, supporting all the other sectors of the economy, is the one that is least funded. What do you understand by that?
Perhaps they have not understood, unrealistically.
They have not understood what?
The decision makers have not understood the...
Well, I think...
I'm not defending them, I'm just thinking
Yes.
effective communication.
Okay, that can be an excuse, but I have to tell you the truth.
Okay.
This is it, that for long, people think environment will somehow rejuvenate on its own.
And it's neighbor's business.
And yeah, you cut down a tree here somewhere, another one will, grow up there. But people have just thought nature can easily recover on its own. But as the population increases, that can no longer be the case. The demand, because some places, if there are trees that somebody sees you have cleared it, you will go and plant there crops and what have you. So I think we need an increased investment in the ENR sector, because that is a very critical sector of the economy.
Let me take an angle, Mr. You can come in, but let me stay with Mr. Gwal. When government, through OWC, gives people mango trees,
Yeah.
and they plant on acres, that means those mangoes are not about to be cut. Does that somehow help on reforestation? You explain to us from a technical standpoint, does that help in reforestation? Because different measures might actually be solutions.
Yes, you see, tree planting can be done in a number of ways.
Yeah.
What we would call the objective, the purpose for which you conceptualize and say you are going to do tree planting. Do you just want to improve environmental quality, or do you want income, or what? So when somebody says, for me, I want to actually plant mangoes and raise my income, that is tree planting. It increases on the other aspects of enhancing the environment around, but the person is benefiting. So it just depends on what the individual wants. Some people want that. Others say, no, me, I want to have my timber, and therefore will go to other species that generally, give them timber. So when people are going to do the pre-planting, they should clearly come up with the objective, the purpose. What do they want from the tree planting? Some people may just say, we just want to restore nature to what it was. Like most of these Central Forest Reserve, the one we are restoring today, those there you find that the species which are in there perform different functions. Some are medicinal. This is what we are having today. Some of it maybe will be got from those tropical high forests. So restore that as it were. But maybe in the farmland, people might say, no, I want this for construction, I want for firewood, I want for what. So people have to set the purpose or objective to which they want to draw the tree planting for.
Mr. Dori, what we are discussing with Mr. Gwala, how does that inform, as a model, a different approach to restoring nature together? Perhaps we are thinking just plant trees, stop cutting trees, and it's rhetoric. And yet, as Mr. Gwala was saying, maybe the economic magnet in there could help us. How does that model inform the efforts to restore nature together? Is it viable? How much?
Yeah, I think it is viable, but I think we first need to understand one thing. We are basically, a poor country.
Absolutely.
And a poor country with a big percentage of our population really poor. And what are their needs? I think the basic needs is food, shelter, and health. And then the others come, education and the rest of it. But if you look at those three basic needs, they really revolve around having those trees, having that clean environment that you need. Food, you need to have that clean soil that you can grow food, and the rains that are coming in time. So that is important. And then the health, you need the medicine. And the medicine can be got from the trees as well. And then shelter. Certainly a villager somebody who is living below poverty level, his house is basically made of the materials from the environment.
Yeah.
The soils, the reeds, the roof is grass, and the structure is wood. That is purely coming from the environment. So meeting the basic needs requires a clean environment and a good environment that is maintained. That is one. And then I think we need to look at the demography of the country. We have a population of 47, 46, 45 million.
Yeah.
75% of them are young people, the youth. They don't have assets. They're basically out there. So how do you tap into that population to invest in what we are talking about, in the model of tree planting? And I think they're ready. They're ready to be mobilized and put into that sector. So I think this is what, as a nation, the government, our planning should focus. If we want to have this talk of, the plan that the Ministry of Water and Environment has on planting 1 million trees, engage the demographic, engage the population. And the population who can do this, energetic and enough to do this, are the youth. So create employment out of tree planting. That
innovation.
Is the innovation. So if they are going to raise nurseries, that is the value chain. If they are going to do the planting, who owns the land? Is it public land or their community land within the villages? Have that one demarcated and defined. What I'm driving at is having a proper land use plan that would help to engender or put in the tree planting activity in it, and at the same time not undermining food security and then economic development of these people. Because we know trees takes time to grow. If you are really looking at it from the perspective, I want the returns quickly. Timber, or even poles.
Timber is 7 years.
7 years minimum for fast growing.
But mango trees are 2 years.
Yeah, 2 years. But somebody can wait for 2 years and get the mango. That is food. So you have the intercropping.
And the money.
You intercropping of your trees plus the mango, the fruit trees. And because they're still trees anyway, they will still perform other functions that the other trees perform. But in addition, they're giving you what? Food, the early foods. In addition, you will have your bees, Utilize that, beekeeping within that thing. And then within 1 year, you already start harvesting honey. And honey is, the market for honey is everywhere. And
so
honey is expensive.
It seems to me that, Mr. Dudu, we have solutions.
Yes.
So only that there are things which are there scattered, which we can't bring together. Unwittingly, they are there.
Absolutely, they are there. And these are the ones I'm really trying to spill out. Now, we talk about the honey.
Yeah.
That the bees are there. They will come and colonize. They are sitting within your plantation, your woodlands, and they are giving you honey.
And they pollinate.
Now, the issue of, we have villages where people don't even have firewood for cooking. But you will have your firewood, which is going to contribute to your good food. The firewood is, you don't need to cut. The twigs, as you prune the trees as they are growing, those are firewood. You don't have to, the women don't have to walk 6 kilometers every day to look for for firewood, but they will just harvest from their backyard. So I think, this integration of the different aspects of the benefits you can get from trees and the environment in totality, if you put it within a context of a good land planning, you talk about the Paris model. Within that Paris model, you have that integrated, that do you have enough sustainable firewood within your parish? That's the first question to ask. No. Now, if you don't have, what do we do about it? We plant. What species do we plant that would give you firewood within the next 6 months? You know, maybe you go for fast-growing species first to provide you with the woodlot, with the firewood, and then the long period growing trees will provide you with the poles and timber at the end. And then you have your mangoes providing you with what? The fruits. And then you have your honey there. Then you have your 2, 3, 5 goats that are going to graze underneath it and browse some of the trees. And then you have your goats.
And we'll come to who draws that model. Maybe I don't know whether we should have time. Because the solutions also must be, somebody must implement them. But let's come back to the question of technology. It has been, of course, pushed even from developing countries as provision of alternatives to destruction of our biodiversity. Realistically, how you see Uganda, how much can technology help us? And here I'm thinking things like, instead of using poles to build the roof, maybe we use metal. And so, Mr. Ogwal, to what extent can technology, as we are here, maybe medium term, 5 years, 10 years, be, how much can we use it to reduce the undermining of biodiversity?
Well, technology is there and it will keep evolving to help, I think, us do certain things much better than we are doing, including in the field of conservation. Using those, I've seen some people now, they say, why would you be still using these concrete pillars?
Yes.
You can use those metals you're
Steel.
talking about. So I think it's a question of trying to integrate things really. If there are those who can afford that, I've even seen now that there are some, we use many electric, we call it the poles for our,
the wooden poles.
you
For
know,
the electricity
for electricity
transmission.
transmission. But I've also seen now some places you find already it is concrete, like
Yes.
the ones we're using. So those are all things coming up. But aware that not everybody will be able to afford technology at a certain given time T. So maybe we need just to integrate. What people should, and it goes back to the tree planting bit of it. I tell you, I do tree planting at home. Back in the village in Otuke, I do tree. The communities were thinking that it was a joke. Now they've seen the trees, they have begun saying, can I cut trees? I need the poles. I said, but
When you're planting,
when I said I was giving you these seedlings, we are not even bothering. Now, within a question of about 3-4 years, or 5, they have seen already, and some of them have started. So I think
Models.
for those that will still want, or we know that maybe the poles and others will be the cheaper option, we need to do still the tree planting of it. And of course, where we can enhance with the use of technology to reduce on too much use on other timber would be better. Even there are some places where now they will give you a very thin layer. Not, you know, some of us of say if it is a table like this, it can be a very thin layer actually of timber there. But you see, for you for buying a chair, you say, is this from Muvule? And you want it to be so thick
and heavy.
and heavy.
For what?
Or so that is the thing. So if technology can come where we don't need to still use very thick, you know, call it of you, the Muvula and others. Maybe from one Muvula you can have so many.
Those these days are with softwood.
Yes.
The pine.
Those ones used to grow faster. So these are the kind of integration that in the mindset of people, because nature as we are talking today will only protect us if we protect it. I was so saddened when I went to Ulira sometime, I don't recall, there is the airfield there. There are these Muvule trees that have, you know, Semeka Kulu, who planted. I think that is the best environmental person we've had.
He's well remembered by the way for
those trees are everywhere.
Even almost. In the Bari, if you're going to.
I went back at certain, I think Christmas time, and I found the airfield looking like some place I don't know.
Open.
They raised down these trees. Now, this is why I'm saying that even the cities, please, it is time we think differently. Not just to wake up and say, these trees must go. It can be a process that you try to first planned, and it's saddening to see a landscape that was well enhanced with this is now just open space. So I think technology will be good for us to embrace, but where we see that not everybody will still be afforded. There are even those who doubt it. They will say, I don't think that it works well. So we still need to do the tree planting. Let the trees, the timber that we are going to use for building come from planted ones, not from natural forest, please. If we can do that, the schools, look at Makerere University. What is the main source of energy there? Makerere University and other universities. Sorry, I didn't mean to pinpoint them, but firewood. Talk of institutions. How many of them are there? And they're using firewood. And where is that firewood coming from?
From the forests.
Those institutions don't have woodlots. That's why we need to think differently. Really, let the firewood and others which are using come from some woodlots we have planted.
No, but also, Mr. Gwala, and I'm thinking along your path. I just learned, we were having a debate with somebody on Twitter. They said that LPG was local, this gas. It was, VAT was removed this financial year.
Yeah, true.
But the truth is, it seems that on paper it never appeared. But the prices went down, and it seems that URA might have applied it without it being on paper. Yeah? And I'm using that to think about it. For example, if Makerere University or anyone was buying gas from any of the Total or Shell, and there was an incentive there, so that institutions are totally stopped from using wood. It's possible because there are not very many. But what the amount of footprint on wood they have,
it is huge.
Question to Mr. Duli. And people don't like this, but can policy help? To start with, Mr. Duli, Mr. Agwal was saying, okay, we need to be careful so we don't move too fast. But for instance, institutions, schools, secondary schools, is it possible for policy to help them stop using wood and use alternatives? Can policy help? How?
Yes, I think policy is a very powerful instrument of bringing change and regulating practice. And I believe you don't need to have a national policy on that. It can start as an ordinance within a district, and it goes as bylaws, and then you make it applied to institutions in those districts. For example, the schools say stop using firewood or stop using charcoal, and instead use briquettes or use the LPGs if the prices are now low enough to be
where the policy they can move down those prices.
Okay, and the policy says, we're going to take off this percentage to make it affordable for schools, and it is is working. I think it would go a long way, and then go away. You look at the cook stoves they use at school, rather than the common bad cook stoves that really consumes a lot of energy. You use the energy savings.
It's a CSO issue now.
Which saves up to about 60 and 70% of fuel wood. And we have done this in many schools in Kasese, Rubirizi, and Arua, where they come back and tell us, we are saving more than 80% of our budget on firewood because of just using the stoves. They're still using firewood, but because they have improved stoves for cooking, they save a lot. So policy does. And then this policy has got to be implemented and enforced.
And informed.
And informed. Fast. So, like the schools, I find it much easier to enforce some of these things in institutions. Because if you have clear leadership, the headmaster, the board of governance, and they all buy into that, it will work. And normally my experience I've seen in the places we work, when one school does it very well, then the rest will copy.
As a model.
As a model. And it will fly to another district. We started with Kasese district, now we're working in over 20 districts in the Albertan Reef, doing the same thing. And they're actually asking us, please, we need more of this.
That means it works.
It works. So your question on policy, I think it's a good instrument that can, only if it can be implemented and awareness about it is known. Then you talked about technology. You know, I want to look at technology from the perspective of the drivers of biodiversity loss. And I start with agriculture. You know, technology in agriculture that would make productivity of the land increase without necessarily expanding the land. So if we have those technologies which are there, productive technology in agriculture, and apply it, and the farmers adopt it, they will increase their productivity within the same piece of land and be able to produce more, which can sustain their life, and then the excess they sell. Then another technology is processing, processing what they get out of the agricultural products. You know, recently we
value addition.
Yeah, value addition, and even just, you know, storage and making sure it doesn't degrade. We have seen recently the issue about maize and Kenya, where they're saying our maize were bad because of storage. So if you can eliminate those wastage coming of bad storage using the right technology, then you're actually adding value. You are making sure that you reduce on losses and improve on the quality.
We have discussed solutions and technology, and I see that we have touched policy. Policy is very powerful. I keep on going back to OWC, and now it's succeeding on the grassroots. We don't see it in town. And I think we already have a government framework which can just take on board issues of environment mixed with economics, and we succeed. But in 5 minutes, we are winding up. Schools, we need to affect. You see, the young people are seeing what the older ones are doing, and they think that is normal. So the modeling is bad from the start. You got the wetland, you pour a soil, it's okay. How are we going to go through the schools, Mr. Gwal, to make sure that tomorrow, even as we try to mitigate today, tomorrow it will be okay?
I think the schools, most of them have got, especially secondary schools, I think, they have areas or spaces where they can actually plant trees. We already started that with some schools, and we used to call it, we are calling it, or still call it, the talking environment, trees and so forth. So schools that have got land, they should start that. It is going to be cheaper in the long run for them to do that. Then that may not to be having land somewhere. Let them get interested to buy land somewhere and have their own woodlot. Actually, the woodlot might even go beyond just woodlot. They might as well integrate with it, where they could sell timber, or that timber, when they now need to do construction at the tertiary institution or secondary, they can actually convert that timber and do. So in the long run, the operations of cost can be reduced, like he was saying on about the stores.
You are speaking economics, reduction of costs, but environmentally.
So from the environmental point of view, then when you are doing the harvesting, it is controlled, not that you raise down everything. So the environmental, of course, by the time the trees say take like 5 years or 8 to mature, you know, the quality of the environment around will have drastically changed. We are doing a lot. If you go to now Ntungamo district, the Bear Hills, which were once bare there, we have piloted. Communities have come, and we are now shocked with the amount of seedlings that we need to give them.
You need to go to Mbali also. I'm just saying. No, but please continue.
A hill area, not so. Yes. So I'm just saying that it is very possible for tree planting to take place. Even at, it will reduce costs, it will enhance the environment. People, of course, should not do reckless harvesting when they're planted, but they can be guided. So schools, they can do that. Let them be innovative about the future. Uganda now, 1945, we were 5 million. Today, we are about 42 million, I think. And 2030, 55 million. 20, I think, 40, 84. You know, as the population is going exponentially, the environment is going in the opposite direction in terms of ecosystem. And things are not going to be good. Our vision 2040 could seriously be undermined.
Absolutely.
By what is happening to the environment.
And I think maybe if you are asking me now as a journalist, I think this thing called program-based execution of fiscal policy, government, budget, I think they should have an environment. I've not checked properly, but I think there might be something on environment, or it's just a cross-cutting issue across all this. But I think it should be integrated in the program-based budget execution going forward. Psychology of young people coming forward, Mr. Duli. what do we do to make sure our environment is part of them when they come ahead?
Yeah, I think the advantage, one thing is that they are young and they are learning and they can be changed.
Yeah.
So I think giving the right message, you know, in the institution of learning is one way. Let's forget if the institution of learning is not a privilege to all the people, the young people, those ones who are not going to school, the institution of culture, cultural institutions,
Yes.
teaching the same thing, talking about the same thing, are the values of life, the values of their society and culture, with the totem they have, the respect they have for their environment, I think would model those ones who are not able to go through the formal education system to get it from there. Then we have the church, you know, and the mosque, the religious faith. Those are institutions also that help model people, the young people. Talking the same thing, the issues about the environment, the issues about sustainability, the issues about their life and the future of their sustainability, using a clean environment and maintaining what they have, that would model them. And I think we also need to have punitive, you know, action against enforcement against the people who are the culprit. There should be no reason why somebody comes and dumps a wetland and that person is known, is not taken to courts of law and prosecuted and made to pay heavy fine for that.
Yeah.
That should be like an example.
Biting.
Biting. So you just need, I know Ugandans are very good cowards. Let me just use that. You do that 5 times in the regions of this country, things will change. They will never do that thing again because they are law abiding. They understand. So he's just coming up with that strong decision that nobody is going to be spared for doing the wrong things, and get them in. Get them in. Get them in. You know, and that would work.
Enforcement.
I remember in Kenya, Minister Ogwa, in Kenya, people had built in a forest reserve.
Is it Mao Forest? Or
Yes, and government said, please remove your houses. We give you a chance to demolish them yourself. Or else we shall demolish them. You know how people are, you know, they make noise.
Yes.
Nothing happened. Those who were clever demolished brick by brick and took their material. Those who refused, even with their property, the graders came and cleared. Finally, 3-4 minutes. Want to finish on this note. Global biodiversity framework.
Yes.
We need to talk about that as we go. What is that animal? I want to keep biodiversity. By
Yes.
animal.
Now, I told you initially that globally, what led to the coming up of the Convention on Biological Diversity, that the globe or the global community realizing that we needed to take action together as the planet or as governments to reduce biodiversity loss. Now, that Convention on Biological Diversity is implemented at the national level through what is called National Biodiversity Strategies and Action Plans.
Okay.
Now, in 2010, the parties to the CBD, that is the Convention on Biological Diversity, adopted what was then called the Strategic Plan for Biodiversity 2011-2020.
Okay.
So that became a framework on which, as countries or parties to the CBD, had to adopt into their NBSAPs.
Yes.
That is the National Biodiversity and Action
Okay.
Plan. So now, this post-2020 is a replacement of that framework, which has now, it ended last year. And the co-chairs are 2. Myself from Uganda and a colleague from Canada called Basil Van Hav.
Okay.
It was a rigorous process of selecting these 2. Because from 196, countries, they had to select only 2 people. 1 from the developed, 1 from the least developing countries.
Yeah.
So Uganda is at that, playing that critical role that the world is now looking at. That framework to guide the world in terms of investing in conserving or protecting biodiversity. By the way, it is going to be a framework that will run up to 2050.
Okay.
But will be implemented over a period of 10 years, 10 years. It can be updated every 10 years. So it should have been adopted last year. But because of COVID, then we couldn't meet as parties could have wanted us to present that framework. I know a little bit for what is there, but there's no time for that. But among the things which are there, restoration is in there. restoring the ecosystem in line with the Decade for Biodiversity. So to tell you, the post-2020 framework is going to be the framework that will guide governments on what global action is needed, therefore at the national level, to really make sure that we protect biodiversity for the benefit of humanity, for the benefit of the planet, and so that even the future generations who are not yet born can actually, benefit from the same resources we are. So it is a huge undertaking that is there, that we're undertaking now.
It's nice we're at the center of this,
Yes.
where we are trying to find solutions. Mr. Dooley, your final words winding up this discussion. I mean, we couldn't discuss everything, but please wind up.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's very, I first of all appreciate NEMA for organizing this function tomorrow to recognize the World Biodiversity
Where is
Day.
it, by the way? You better give the information. Where is that event?
Let me correct him. The function was brought forward to today.
Okay.
So right now there's restoration happening in Kakiri.
Doing work, not just
No,
eating.
people are planting in that forest called Nachi Bida. The name is here. Let me just get it right. The restoration is going on right now there, but this is called Nachindiba Central
Okay.
Forest Reserve.
Okay.
So as we are here, there are people who are planting
Planting
trees there.
Doing work, not just...
Telling nature we are sorry, we have been reckless. We want to get back in peace. So the planting is going on. So tomorrow people can still continue to observe the day. They can continue to plant the trees. But we want the tree planting not to be done as just another big day to do it. You do 100 and you leave. We want to go and plant and do the entire 20 hectares of that forest.
Okay.
So when we start restoration of an ecosystem, we go to full length
Okay.
this time round.
We interrupted you as you wound up.
Yes. So I think it's a good thing that we are celebrating the Biodiversity Day in Uganda. We've celebrated other environment days, but biodiversity has been not really in the center. I think it's a great thing that NEMA has come out with that. And then two, raising the awareness of the importance of biodiversity across our society. And that is a responsibility for all of us, and together we can actually restore our biodiversity. Also telling people that, we have lost, the global framework is now coming, the post-2020, but on realizing that the past framework did not do as much because we continued seeing nature decline and species extinction. So this post-2020 is more of like what is coming from the bottom to up. So our leaders are going with issues.
That's important.
Our leaders are going with issues to the UN summit and say, these are really the issues. This is what we demand the globe to do. And I think that is more powerful than probably having it up, coming from above with a few scientists saying you need to do this, need to do this. But this time it's coming from down, and our African leaders and other states are going to that summit with information and issues that they want to see the globe come together, the planet come together to address biodiversity loss and restoration.
Okay. That brings us to a good end. We have been discussing International Day for Biological Diversity, or biodiversity, restoring nature together. The two gentlemen in the studio were discussing, issues at government level, but we spent a lot of time at your level. What you can do in that estate where you have been, what can you do in that locality where you are, local government, what can you do? And we're not saying what can you do, we are saying do it. And of course, government has to do more in this regard. We hope you found the discussions very useful. Do something, because somehow it has everything to do with you. If you plant a tree in your compound and your neighbor does, in about 5 years, the temperature of that place will change and everybody will be enjoying in ways you cannot imagine. Thank you for joining us, and bye for now.